Three Chinese warships recently appeared near Australia's coast, just 150 nautical miles off Sydney. What is really happening, and how might Australia and the United States respond to this unexpected military move by Beijing? On February 19, 2025, three Chinese naval vessels, comprising a Renhai-class cruiser, a Zhangkai-class frigate, and a Fuchi-class replenishment ship, were detected approximately 150 nautical miles east of Sydney. The ships passed through Australia's exclusive economic zone and conducted training exercises, including live fire drills, without prior notification. Australian Defence Minister Richard Marles responded by stating, "We are monitoring their every move." In light of these developments, Australia has announced a AUD 1.6 billion investment to upgrade RAF Base Tyndall in the Northern Territory. This strategic upgrade is designed to accommodate U.S. strategic bombers, such as the B-52, and to enhance the base's capacity for joint military operations. Australia and the United States have maintained a long-standing alliance under the ANZUS Treaty. Signed in 1951, the treaty binds the two nations to consult and act jointly in response to threats in the Pacific region. Australia invoked ANZUS for the first time following the September 11th attacks, offering support to the United States in the global fight against terrorism. In 2021, the AUKUS partnership was established between Australia, the United Kingdom, and the United States, aimed at deepening defense cooperation in areas such as nuclear-powered submarines, artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, and hypersonic technology. AUKUS is widely viewed as a strategic move to enhance deterrence and defense capabilities across the Indo-Pacific. The growing U.S. military presence in Northern Australia, particularly at bases in Darwin and Tyndall, has raised concerns among neighboring countries. China has voiced its opposition to Australia's involvement in AUKUS and its plan to acquire nuclear-powered submarines, warning that such moves could escalate tensions and increase the risk of conflict in the region. A spokesperson for China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs described the agreement as a dangerous and misguided path and cautioned against the potential for a regional arms race. While the expansion of military infrastructure, such as at RAF bases in Tyndall and Darwin, brings economic opportunities, including job creation and improved local infrastructure, some Australian citizens and former officials have expressed concern that increased military activity may elevate the country's exposure in the event of regional conflict. Indonesia and several other Southeast Asian nations have also reacted with caution. Indonesia, in particular, has emphasized the importance of restraint and has called on all parties to remain committed to regional peace and stability. The United States is actively expanding its military footprint in Northern Australia, with infrastructure projects underway at RAF Base Tyndall and RAF Base Darwin. These developments, funded in part by the U.S., are intended to support the deployment of bombers and submarines, while also enhancing rapid response capabilities across the Indo-Pacific. As part of the AUKUS plan by 2027, U.S. and U.K. nuclear-powered submarines are expected to rotate through HMAS Stirling Naval Base in Western Australia. Under the Submarine Rotational Force West initiative, Australia is set to receive 3 Virginia-class submarines from the United States in the early 2030s, and will also work with the United Kingdom to co-develop the SSN AUKUS class, with deployment anticipated in the early 2040s. As the U.S. ramps up its military campaign with bunker-busting bombs and stealth aircraft, Iran is quietly pulling out its advisors. The question now, is Washington securing maritime safety or laying the groundwork for a broader conflict in the Red Sea? Between mid-January and April 9, 2025, the U.S. and the U.K. launched more than 230 airstrikes targeting Houthi positions in Yemen. On April 9th alone, the U.S. carried out a major assault, striking Sada, Alba, and Al-Huda, deploying B-2 Spirit bombers, Arleigh Burke-class destroyers, the USS Carl Vinson, and the USS Harry S. Truman Strike Group. The strikes included GBU-57 bunker buster bombs each weighing over 10,000 pounds, designed to destroy underground missile depots. While many military sites were hit, the attacks also damaged civilian infrastructure, worsening access to electricity, clean water, and healthcare. In the U.S., the campaign has boosted military spending, but also increased risk for American forces in the region. In the Gulf, countries like Saudi Arabia and the UAE support the campaign, while others, including Oman and Egypt, express concern about escalation. Meanwhile, Red Sea trade, which accounts for 12% of global commerce, is slowly stabilizing, easing fears of supply chain disruptions. Western intelligence reports that Iran had supplied the Houthis with over 300 drones, mostly Shahed 136, 100 long-range missiles, and dozens of QUDS force advisors. But by late March 2025, Tehran pulled out more than 50 advisors and cut support by over 80% compared to Q4 2024. Inside Iran, the government is under pressure to reduce foreign involvement, as inflation surges above 45%, and protests erupt in Tehran and Isfahan over military spending. In Yemen, the Houthis are losing technical support and shifting from offensive tactics to a defensive posture. Across the region, Iran's retreat is helping ease tensions with Saudi Arabia and giving Oman and Qatar room to revive peace talks between Yemeni factions. According to the UN, over 21 million people in Yemen are in urgent need of humanitarian aid, including 2.2 million severely malnourished children. The Yemeni rial has collapsed by more than 90%, dropping from 250 to over 2,500 rials per US dollar. Food and medicine prices have soared fivefold. Local aid groups report at least 300 civilian casualties since January. In the U.S., no civilian deaths have been reported, but 4 service members were injured in a drone attack on the USS Laboon in early February. The entire operation has cost over $500 million. Meanwhile, shipping rates through the Red Sea have jumped 200%, raising concerns that inflation could resurface, especially on oil, coffee, and electronics. Somalia and Oman are also struggling to absorb Yemeni refugees, placing strain on healthcare systems. Since January 19th, Houthi forces have halted attacks on Western shipping, a sign the U.S. campaign may be achieving short-term goals. The Pentagon estimates that 60% of Houthi drone and missile infrastructure has been destroyed. On land, the Houthis have turned to guerrilla warfare, but without logistics support, they're struggling to maintain operations. Over 10,000 Yemenis fled the country into Oman and Somalia during Q1 2025, double the number from the same period last year. In Washington, officials stress the U.S. does not intend to occupy Yemen, but will maintain naval and air presence through the end of 2025 to protect key trade routes. Across the region, the show of force has deterred other militant groups in Syria and Iraq, contributing to a period of relative calm in parts of the Middle East. The U.S.-China trade dispute has entered one of its most volatile phases, marked by tit-for-tat tariffs. tighter controls on rare earth exports, and growing uncertainty in global supply chains. As economic strategies sharpen on both sides, questions arise over who holds the stronger position in this unfolding standoff. A. On April 9th, President Donald Trump announced a new 125% tariff on Chinese imports. According to a senior White House official, this figure adds to a previously imposed 20% tariff targeting products linked to the opioid fentanyl, bringing the total effective tariff rate to 145%. The decision followed China's move to impose an 84% tariff on American goods, another sign of intensifying friction between the world's two largest economies. In response, Beijing swiftly announced it would impose a 125% tariff on all U.S. origin goods entering China, effective April 12th. On April 4th, 2025, China formally lodged a complaint with the World Trade Organization, WTO, challenging the U.S. decision to impose an additional 34% tariff on Chinese products, bringing the total rate to approximately 54%. China argues that the U.S. measures violate WTO rules and is urging a rollback of the new tariffs. Under WTO procedures, both parties are expected to enter a 60-day consultation period. Should these discussions fail, China may request the involvement of the WTO's dispute settlement body. Beijing has reiterated its intention to take firm and proportionate steps to safeguard its lawful rights and interests. Chinese authorities emphasize that no party truly benefits from a trade war and called on the U.S. to lift unilateral tariffs and pursue solutions through mutual respect rather than pressure. In a concurrent move, China announced new export controls on 7 critical rare earth elements: samarium, gadolinium, terbium, dysprosium, lutetium, scandium, and yttrium. These materials are essential in advanced manufacturing sectors, including electric vehicles, defense systems, and consumer electronics. China currently accounts for around 90% of global rare earth production and processing. In light of the new restrictions, several countries and multinational firms have begun seeking alternative sources and investing in non-Chinese rare earth supply chains. At present, the U.S. produces about 12% of the world's rare earth output, primarily from the Mountain Pass mine in California. However, due to limited domestic processing capacity, nearly 2/3 of this output is still sent to China for refinement. To reduce reliance on foreign processing, the U.S. government has launched several key investment initiatives. MP Materials is building a processing facility at Mountain Pass, aimed at supplying rare earth magnets to General Motors by year-end. Lynas Rare Earths received $258 million from the U.S. Department of Defense to construct a rare earth refinery in Texas, though the project has faced delays over wastewater management issues. VASI, a German company, secured nearly $100 million from the U.S. government to establish a rare earth magnet manufacturing site in South Carolina. Despite these efforts, several challenges persist. High costs. Building a rare earth facility in the U.S. can cost 3 times as much as in China. Environmental regulations. Stringent permitting and environmental rules have delayed multiple projects. Skilled labor shortage. A lack of domestic expertise in rare earth processing has driven demand for specialized training and international recruitment. U.S.-China tariff escalation sparks concerns of global economic fragmentation. Trade tensions between the U.S. and China are sharply intensifying, triggering price surges and shaking global financial markets. Is this just the beginning of a deeper economic split? Or could an unexpected turning point help avert a broader crisis? The trade friction between the U.S. and China has been ongoing since 2018-2019, When the US first slapped high tariffs on Chinese goods, Beijing answered with a series of retaliatory moves. Now, China's stepping it up, announcing tariffs up to 84% on US imports. No, that hits hard, especially for soybeans, corn, beef, plus tech and machine parts. The US fired back, hiking tariffs on Chinese goods to between 100% and 145%. That means electronics, textiles, auto parts, all getting way more expensive in the US. For American exporters, especially those dependent on China, these tariffs could mean serious trouble. We're talking disruptions, or even permanent market loss. Meanwhile, global stock markets, especially in the US and Asia, are sliding. Why? Because investors are worried about supply chains breaking down and what this could mean for the future of global growth. According to estimates from the Peterson Institute for International Economics and various independent studies, elevated tariffs could cost American households an additional $3,000 to $5,000 annually, if maintained over time. Recent data from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, the BLS, indicates that inflation in 2023 ranged from 4% to 6%, based on the annual Consumer Price Index, the CPI. Additional tariffs could further exacerbate consumer price increases, especially for imported goods such as electronics, clothing, and home appliances. Efforts to shift supply chains away from China to alternative markets like Vietnam or India could raise production costs by approximately 10%. For products requiring specialized components or technology, cost increases could reach up to 40%. If prices continue to rise, purchasing power, especially among middle and lower income households, may be significantly impacted. Amid ongoing trade tensions, yields on U.S. Treasury bonds have surged, with the 30-year yield nearing 5% and the 10-year yield approaching 4.5%. According to data from the U.S. Treasury and Bloomberg, 10-year yields fluctuated between 3.5% and 4.3% in the second half of 2023, showing substantial volatility compared to previous periods of relative stability. Concerns over a prolonged tariff conflict and a broader economic slowdown have led institutional investors and funds to restructure their portfolios. This shift has reduced demand for government bonds. In some cases, market turbulence has triggered margin calls, forcing hedge funds to sell off positions, adding to the chain reaction across global financial markets. China has reportedly reduced its holdings of U.S. Treasury securities to below $750 billion. Despite still being one of America's largest foreign creditors in 2023, China's holdings have shown a steady downward trend in recent months. According to data from the U.S. Treasury, trade-related tensions may be incentivizing Beijing to gradually scale back its exposure to U.S.-denominated assets as a way to reduce economic dependency. A sell-off of treasuries could also serve as a hedge against inflation, against currency volatility, or to strengthen domestic liquidity. Moves like this often shape the strategies of global investment funds and corporations and can increase volatility in both equity and foreign exchange markets. The U.S. is reportedly working to strengthen trade ties with key strategic partners like Japan, India, and the European Union in an effort to counterbalance China's growing economic influence. According to the World Trade Organization, the WTO, these alliances already represent a significant share of global trade. But differences in rules of origin, technical standards, and national policy goals are making it difficult to establish unified trade strategies. Tighter trade restrictions on China could eventually lead to a true decoupling of global supply chains, splitting the world into two distinct trade blocs. The G7's partial economic isolation of Russia showed us what that looks like. Increased costs, more risk, and ripple effects far beyond just the countries involved. Companies around the world may be forced to restructure supply networks, absorb higher operating costs, and sacrifice flexibility, all in an environment that's becoming more uncertain and more fragmented.